Hi, I just wanted to talk about the persuasive essay requirements a little bit. So instead of having a PowerPoint this time, the information is listed on this handout. And number one, you're writing your last essay, so that's a good thing. And what it's going to do is ask you to pick a topic that is of importance to you and that is controversial. The controversial piece is hopefully going to help your essay to be persuasive. Persuasive, obviously, you're trying to get people to think or to act in a certain way. And so, you can pick a whole bunch of topics that you want to get people to think one way or the other. You want them to agree with you. And so don't pick something that people already agree with. The sky is blue doesn't make any sense for us to persuade people that the sky is blue because most people already agree with that. You want to pick something that's a little bit controversial. You also don't want to ride the fence, sort of. You don't want to, both agree and disagree. You want to pick a side, as difficult as that can be. So when you're choosing a topic, think about topics that you find to be, important to you and things that have a side one way or the other. And the best essays that I've read have been about local issues. It could be something in your home that's happening. There was a student who wrote a very persuasive essay. She wanted her boyfriend to take her on vacation. So something like that. There was a son that wanted his mom to buy him a motorcycle. So those are home type of topics. You could have topics relating to school, so maybe your own schooling. So, should college be free, and talk about it from your perspective. Do you feel like your kids shouldn't have homework? Those are school related topics. You could also talk about your state or your town, things that are happening in your vicinity. It can be national, but I do ask you to be very, very careful about those. If it's a national issue, those are generally huge issues that have lots of layers, and sometimes it's difficult to talk about those topics adequately in just 4 pages. And so be careful about that. And as always, pick something that you're passionate about. Your writing will be a lot better if that's the case. And then talking about requirements. So these are some of the things that you'll see hopefully in the content this week. You want to make sure that you consider your audience. Audience is important always, but especially when you're looking at persuasion. What do your readers already know? What kind of context or background are you going to have to build? What are you going to have to tell them? How are you going to relate this topic to them? What are their current opinions? What do people think? Are you kind of the lone wolf on this one, or are there a whole bunch of people who believe what you do? You need to be careful of those kind of things. Are you going to relate it to a specific audience? You can totally do that. So if you wanted to talk to the school board, or you wanted it to be your city council or your instructor, those are people that you can specifically relate it to, and you could almost write it as a letter. It doesn't have to be, but it could be that. You will also need a thesis which states your position. It's called an assertion or a claim in persuasive writing, so you'll want that to be evident. You'll want well-organized arguments that support your position. So think very carefully about organization. Will you organize from most important to least important, or will you go vice versa? You will want a counter argument, which is the other side's position, and then you'll want to refute that. There's a piece that will come later on in the content about counter arguments. So you want to be thinking, so somebody who disagrees with me, what do they say? And how do I fight back? And maybe not fight back, but how do I refute that? If you're asking for a curfew extension, or your kids are asking for a curfew extension, and your parent says no, well, what do you come back with? But my grades are good, and then what does that parent come back and say to you? That would be your counter argument. You want a sincere and respectful tone, so you don't want to offend anyone because that turns your audience off right away. So make sure that you are respectful. You don't want to come across as an angry rant. You don't want your essay to come off as an angry rant either, so be careful of those things. Like all essays, you want an interesting intro and an interesting conclusion. The thing about the conclusion in a persuasive piece is that it generally includes a call to action, or it talks about the significance of the topic. More often than not, it's a call to action. What that means is, now that I've read this entire piece and you've given me all of this information about why I should think or do what you want me to, what should I do with this information? What do you want me to do? Do you want me to write a letter to my legislator? Do you want me as a school board member to vote a certain way? Do you want me to book a trip? What is it that you want me to do or want me to think about? That's the call to action. Like all essays, should be around 4 pages in length. So if you're looking for a length requirement, as always, it's about 4 pages in length. One thing that you're going to want to pay particular attention to, and especially in the content this week, is the research component. Persuasive writing lends itself to, having things backed up. We want to have some credibility to your argument. And so you're going to learn a little bit about the very basics of research. And so you're going to have to include 3 to 5 direct quotes, which are going to back up your position, maybe provide context, maybe give some authority to your opinion, but no more than 5 and no less than 3. So it's difficult because sometimes we want our whole entire persuasive essay to be just, research and quotes, and that's not what this is supposed to be. It should be 95% of your words and maybe 5% of somebody else's. And so you have to be very strategic about where you put those quotes. And again, we'll talk more throughout the content this week as to how to quote, what's a good in-text citation, what's a references page, which is coming up in the next bullet. And so be very careful in terms of the content. Make sure that you watch and read everything that's there. You will also need to include a references page, which is going to provide a listing of the credible sources that you use. So when you go to look for your information, make sure that what you're finding is credible, and there'll be something about credible sources that you'll be able to take a look at. You want to use at least 2 different sources. So when you're picking your quotes, you don't want them to come from the same people. You want them to come from different sources. You are going to, as I mentioned before, need to correctly cite those within the text of your paper. And again, you'll find some information about that. And these are all written in APA style. If you have any questions about this assignment or about anything on here, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask.